Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So let me talk about what we're going to do this evening. I'm going to give a little info session about gap years at Duke, but I want to save the majority of our time for our student panel. We have with us two current gap year participants who will be members of the Duke class of 2030, as well as two current students who have generously offered to share their gap year experiences. So, important note, welcome to Duke. Duke encourages persons with disabilities to participate in its programs and activities. If you would like to request accommodation services for an undergraduate admissions information session, our session is undergraduate admissions, though many of your sessions will be Office of Enrollment Management. Please contact my colleague Susan Semonite at undergrad-admissions@duke.edu or 919-684-3214 to arrange these for a later date. So why don't we go ahead and start with the large question, which is why take a gap year? So for this slide, I want to hand things over to Noah Miasnik, who actually designed this slide last year, because I think she's the very best person to tell everybody here, why gap years might be valuable for you or for your child, if for all the parents who are on here.
Thank you, Cami. Hi guys, I'm Noah. I'm a sophomore here at Duke. I'm studying electrical and computer engineering with a minor in psychology. Over my gap year, I traveled, I worked, I volunteered a little bit, and it was really, really an incredible experience. So first of all, I wanted to just say huge congratulations to all of you for getting into Duke. That's a major accomplishment, and really, really excited for you, and hope you come and join the Blue Devils. I think, gap years in general are just an incredibly unique opportunity for you guys especially, given the fact that you've gotten into Duke, into this incredible school. You're able to essentially defer your enrollment at Duke and have a year to do anything you want. And that can be, learning a new skill, traveling, working, really just kind of whatever you set your mind to, the world is your oyster. And I think you're able to mature a ton. You become a lot more independent. You understand a little bit about yourself. You understand yourself a lot more, and at the end of the day, you become a lot more prepared getting into Duke or whatever school you end up deciding. And I think what's really unique about gap years at Duke is that Duke really understands the value of taking a gap year, and they're really here to support you, both financially, both you know having a gap year network and gap year alumni that are so passionate about gap years and want to share their experiences and help you kind of navigate your year, and gap year advisors and more. And so really, it's this year that you can really do anything you want, do anything you want with that. You're really not going to get a year like this ever again in your life. And Duke is going to be waiting there for you in a year's time, and you're going to be so much more prepared and excited to learn and kind of have this year to really do anything you want. So I can, again, obviously talk about this for many hours, but would really recommend taking a gap year. And yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit more about the gap year pathways at Duke. So Duke offers two gap year pathways. First is the Duke Gap Year Program, which is going to be our focus for this evening's program. But I'm also happy to answer questions about independent gap years. And if you have any questions throughout this session, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A below. We're going to reserve the chat for technical issues, but we're happy to look at your questions in the Q&A and try to address them during the program. Whether or not you choose the Duke Gap Year program, we hold a space in the following year's class for all gap year participants, as long as they follow the gap year conditions at admissions.duke.edu/gap year. So as Noah says, Duke is a school that's really supportive of gap years. We recognize this unique opportunity. We recognize what people who have done gap years bring to the Duke community, all the perspectives and experiences and expertise they bring from their gap year. So if this is something you're considering, you can be rest assured that Duke is a place that supports that goal. So what is the Duke Gap Year Program? So the Duke Gap Year Program provides incoming Duke students with funding and support for their gap years, as well as a community during their gap years and throughout their time at Duke. So some key things to know: all admitted students who commit to enrolling at Duke are eligible to apply to the Duke Gap Year program. So when you're on a gap year, or whether you're in the gap year program or not, you're not an enrolled student. You are off on your gap year, but you will defer your enrollment for a year and become an enrolled student a year later, after your gap year. Funding. So all Duke Gap Year program applicants, regardless of financial need, may provide a budget requesting $5,000 to $15,000 in funding to support eligible gap year activities. Those with financial need may be eligible for up to $25,000 of funding, with exact totals depending on the level of financial need. Accessibility is really important to us, so we don't want finances to be a limit to be something that turns you away from doing a gap year. So I hope every people who are concerned about cost will know that we really are dedicated to making gap years accessible for all. Thirdly, consultants, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this on the next slide. We offer financial support to receive advice from external professional gap year consultants to assist in planning a meaningful gap year. So another barrier we've noticed is that many students, they don't know what they want to do on their gap year, or they're not sure how to go about planning. So we want to be able to point you in the direction of people who can help you out with that. Community. So Duke Gap Year program participants retain a tie to Duke and connect with other gap year participants during their gap year and also after their gap year is over. So just last weekend, there was a gap year outing to like do go-karts. Noah was one of the organizers of our retreat back in September. So it's a little bit of a different experience to enter Duke after a gap year. So you can kind of rest assured that you're going to get to know other people who've shared that experience. There are a few smaller requirements for the Duke Gap Year program. You'll contribute to the Duke Gap Year program blog and Instagram account, but we're dedicated to making that easy for you and to allow you to kind of do the timing that works for you. We don't want the requirements to get in the way of you benefiting from your gap year. So to continue a little bit about the funding for gap year guidance. So everybody here who has committed to Duke is eligible to apply for funding to support working with a gap year consultant accredited by the Gap Year Association. So regardless of financial need, you can apply for $250 of funding. For people with financial need, we're really pleased to offer support equal to the full cost of the consulting plan of your choice. Receiving funding to work with a consultant does not obligate you to take a gap year. You're welcome to explore the possibility, seek the funding, and make the decision that's right for you. If you're interested in learning more, I'll be sending a follow-up email about this, but you can also read more detailed information on your Duke application portal, and all the information should be there as if you've committed to Duke. So what's next? So to apply to the Duke Gap Year program or to request an independent gap year, you just go to your Duke application portal. You'll describe your gap year plans. Duke Gap Year program applicants should also provide a tentative budget if you wish to be considered for funding. One thing people often ask is, what if I haven't completely decided on my plans? What if I want my plans to sort of develop over the course of the year? That's completely fine. We understand that one of the really valuable things about a gap year is that, opportunities come up, you meet new people, you develop your interests. And as long as you stay in touch with us and your plans remain eligible, we're happy to hear requests for changes in plans or changes in funding, those kinds of things. We're really committed to review requests for independent gap years within approximately 2 weeks. And we also consider Duke Gap Year program applications on a rolling basis. The deadline for all gap year requests is June 1st, except in unusual circumstances. So you have a while to continue to consider this and to seek advice and connect with us. If you're attending Blue Devil Days Thursday, Friday, or Monday, you have 2 opportunities to talk with me, and more importantly, gap year current students who did gap years will be having a lunch at 12:30. There's registration available when you register for Blue Devil Days, but we also welcome walk-ins. And we're also going to be at the academic fair every day. So to learn more about gap years in general, there's a QR code. You're also welcome to email us at dukegapyear@duke.edu. If you're interested in the Duke Gap Year program in particular, there's our website, and you can also follow us on Instagram and see what the current cohort is up to. But with that, I want to hand things over to our panelists, and I'll just ask them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about what they did on their gap year. So why don't we go ahead and start with our current Duke students? So Kai and Noah are here. So Kai, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us, what you're thinking about studying at Duke and what you did on your gap year as well.
Hi there. So I am Kai Napper. I'm from the UK and I'm a freshman here at Duke. Absolutely love the gap year program, but I'll get onto that quickly. I'm an intended math and philosophy major, but that is obviously very open to change since we only have to lock it in a year from now, at least for me. Over my gap year, I traveled all across the world, going to South Korea, the Maldives, Costa Rica, Hawaii, Greece, and Italy, just volunteering and exploring the world because although I had been to the US before, that was pretty much all I traveled to. So it was nice to be able to see so many different cultures, meet so many different people, and experience such amazing things and eat some amazing food.
Excellent. And next up, how about Noah?
Hi, I'm Noah. Like I said, I'm a sophomore here at Duke. I'm studying electrical and computer engineering, so I'm in Pratt, and I'm doing a minor in psychology. Like I mentioned again, over my gap year, I spent some time traveling, interning, and volunteering, kind of all over the world, South America, Asia, Australia, Europe, you name it. I loved my gap year so much that I ended up becoming a gap year intern here for the Duke Gap Year program. So really happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
And yeah, my gap year kind of was a very, very formative experience. And I think something that's pretty consistent across a lot of gappers that I've noticed is their kind of desire to take on as much as they can at Duke after a year of traveling and of learning how to become, learning how to be themselves and become more independent. They come into Duke with this kind of go getter mentality and make the most out of their experience here. And so yeah, it's been really, really awesome both on my gap year and being here at Duke.
It's true. Kai's also a new intern. We have so many interns, which I'm super fortunate to have all these great people working with me. Let's see. How about Jet, current gap year person?
Sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Jet Peters. I'm from Washington State, and I got in last year, so I've been on a gap year this year. My gap year has been mostly focused on my academic interests. I run a remote telescope down in Utah, in the Utah desert, and I've been continuing to work with that, to work on my astronomy research projects, as well as take pretty pictures of the cosmos. This year, I traveled to a conference in Tasmania where I spoke about astronomy education. And that was a super fun experience. Seeing the moon upside down and Orion on its head was a very interesting experience. There's objects in the night sky are all flipped in the southern hemisphere. And getting to see 26-meter radio telescopes down in Tasmania, stuff like that was super, super fun. I've submitted proposals to the VLA for nebula research I'm working on. And I've also just, there's been some little stuff. I've stayed current on the math and physics I hope to continue working on at Duke. And then, I've gotten into mountain biking and stuff like that. So a few big things and then a little small things to sprinkle in there.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right, Lucas, how about you?
Hi everybody, I'm Lucas. I'm also a current gap year student, so I'm in the middle of my gap year. For my gap year in the fall portion, I was in China for 4 or 5 months. I lived with a Chinese family, which was a great experience. Also a bit on my own, going to different cities, going to some different schools, to some cool cities. So really enjoyed that. And then for this portion of my gap year, like the spring part, I started in Europe, so was traveling a bit there, then was in Spain for a month, brushing up some of my Spanish. I I really enjoyed just going to different countries, getting a feel for what it's like to live there. And then I took some trains, visited some cities along the way from the south of Spain to Turkey, which was a great experience getting to know Europe. And then from Turkey, I just got back in China 2, 3 weeks ago and visiting some cities, visiting some friends, and continuing to learn Chinese, which I've loved so far.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So I hope one thing that you noticed from all these answers, and I don't want to talk too much because I know you want to hear from gap year students, but there's so many different things that you can do in a gap year. It is not at all a one size fits all endeavor. So it might be pursuing research interests, it might be travel, it might be volunteering in your hometown, it might be some combination of those things. So you shouldn't feel like a gap year is for one particular type of person or one person with certain interests. There's so many ways to make a gap year meaningful for you. And I think these are just a few of the many ways that you can spend them. Some students spend time on kind of group programs where you travel with a group. Other people do independent travel. It's really up to you, what your goals are and what your level of comfort is and, what works for you and your family. So I guess I'm going to ask the question starting with our current Duke students that probably people have asked you 1 million times. And that's why did you take a gap year in the first place? So I guess I'm going to call on Noah. Noah, what inspired you to take a gap year?
Totally. So my older brother, he's six years older than me. He took a gap year, and that was kind of the first time that I heard of the concept. I was what, like 10 years old, and or maybe 12, and I kind of was immediately stuck to the idea. I think it's like I mean I was saying this earlier, but I think it's a very, very unique opportunity that you don't really get at any other point in your life, where you have this year, you're already into Duke, which is, a dream school, and you get to defer your enrollment, so you don't have to worry about what you're doing for after your year, and you have this year where you can literally do anything you want to. And I don't really think you get a year like that ever in your life again. At Duke, you're very focused at school and stuff like that, and after there's kind of this, there might be this pressure to maybe start, getting a job or figuring out grad school plans, or kind of getting a move on with your life. But this is a time in your life where, like, you really have the ability to do whatever you want. You're able to grow a ton, to mature a ton, and really you come into Duke or whatever school feeling so much more prepared, and kind of with this willingness and wanting to learn more, and kind of this fresh set of new eyes and ability and desire to excel in wherever you are.
All right. How about one of our current gap year participants? So Lucas or Jet, which one of you would like to share? Or both?
I can go on this one.
Great, thank you.
So my reason, I had a few reasons for taking a gap year, but the main one, as I talked before, was about research. I had started a bunch of research projects in high school. I attended Stanford Online High School, and they, guided me through starting some projects, and there were some classes where I started some independent research projects. And going right into college, I wouldn't have time to finish those, right? When you're in college, you don't have a lot of time to work on a bunch of independent projects that are outside your classes and outside, the projects that you're doing at school. And so the time in the gap year gave me, the amount of time to finish those projects and continue working on them. And so I can carry them into college, maybe in a different capacity, right? I've done some of the work that lets me kind of do just a little bit of work while I'm in college and still maintain the project. So those academic projects are mainly nebula research. I hunt for undiscovered nebula in the night sky. And this year, my main focus was to kind of pave the way for the amateur community to work with the professional community in different wavelengths of light. So amateur astronomers discover nebula, which are these big clouds of dust and gas in space, with optical telescopes. But a lot of these amateur discovered nebula have never been looked at in the other wavelengths of light, which are necessary to really get meaningful information out of these new discoveries. And so I've worked with some professors that I met actually in Tasmania to work on proposing some of these nebula to large ground-based radio telescopes and space-based X-ray telescopes. And so that was kind of the academic focus, and having this time has let me do a ton of work on that project that I wouldn't have been able to do in college. Doing a VLA proposal or a proposal to a large instrument takes a lot of time. And by doing it this year, I can work on the results of those, hopefully if they all work out, while I'm in college, and it will, it's a less time commitment. I've committed the time now, so I'll have an easier time later, and I'll be able to continue those projects. And then also, I have to be honest, I'm severely dyslexic, and I was a little worried about going into some of those writing requirements, right? I'm a STEM major, or want to be a STEM major, and so I feel good about the math, but I'm not so great at the writing, just because of dyslexia. And so this year has given me some time to work on that, which I needed to do, and so that has been a really big part of my gap year as well.
Great. And I hope Jet's explanation also shows you that like people who do gap years have so many interests and they're just a really cool community to get to know. Because like had no idea that taking pictures of nebula was a thing, but I've just gotten to learn a little bit about that from our monthly Zooms. And everybody here, has traveled really interesting places, done some interesting internships. So it's just a great community to be connected with in general. Let's see, Kai or Lucas, do you all want to share, why you decided to take a gap year?
Yeah,
I can go next. Oh,
uh,
wait, Lucas, you go ahead. Don't worry.
go ahead. I go? Okay.
Yeah, you can go. Don't worry.
So for
Lucas, you
me,
can go, and then Kai.
thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, for me, it was the idea really only came to my mind when I like around the time all the acceptances, like all the rejections, all the decisions were coming out, right? So it was more after I got accepted into Duke. I didn't know too much about taking a gap year before that. And for me, it was like, okay, I think if I don't take a gap year, I'm going to regret it. And because I was already somewhat interested in it, right? And I think the other option would be to take a gap year after you do undergraduate. But I think the smarter decision is doing it like here, what Duke has offered because they have the funding. And I think after you do your undergraduate, you'll have more momentum trying to find a job or doing a master's. So I think for me, it was really a logical decision just to take a gap year, really no matter what happened, because I think I would have regretted it if I did not take one. But for me, the main goal was I really like learning languages. So kind of getting a feel for a culture like in China that I was really not familiar with and picking up a new skill. And yeah, I mean, for me, the only reason I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to take a gap year is because kind of the fear of being uncomfortable, or you see everyone going into college being all excited about that. But I think if you can delay that immediate like hype or satisfaction of transitioning to something that's very cool, then you can learn a lot, grow a lot, and kind of like the other panelists have been saying, get a new perspective that I think gives you an edge, or even like when you're finding a job, right? Or in the next stage of life can give you an edge in a lot of ways you didn't expect.
Yes. And I mean, I think in terms of career prep, I'd encourage you all. We have a podcast. I actually can take zero credit for this because it was totally initiated by our interns called the Duke Gap and Yap podcast on Spotify. And there's a really cool episode with a gap year participant, now sophomore, named Katerina, talking about how she did an internship in Moldova, and how that sort of connected to her career interests and future internships during college. So Duke Gap and Yap podcast. Come see us at the table. We have stickers for that too. But for now, I'll hand it over to Kai. So Kai, why did you decide to take a gap year?
So initially, actually, I didn't really want to take a gap year. Although in the UK, a lot of people take gap years, I was very set on going forward with the next stage of life, heading straight into college, which is probably what the majority of people, is the main reason why the majority of people don't take gap years. But what changed for me was I thought, why not? Like, why not try and give it a shot, plan out a gap year? And when I did, I realized, oh, wait, this gives me the opportunity and the excuse to do everything I've ever wanted to do in life. Like all the things I can't do because I'm stuck at school. So I stayed in a temple in a Buddhist monastery in South Korea. I volunteered and worked at the BAFTAs, which is the equivalent of the Oscars in the UK. And then I worked in a resort in the Maldives, and I worked at a turtle sanctuary in Costa Rica. So I did all these amazing things that physically would not have been able to like happen. Well, probably could have happened, but it would have been so much harder if I didn't take the leap and then take a year off.
Great. So I think Lucas sort of introduced what my next question is going to be, which is, what are the challenges of taking a gap year? So this could either be, just the idea of like maybe falling behind your friends or other people you knew from high school, or else a challenge that you encountered during your gap year with planning or something that came up. Because I think sort of the skill of flexibility is something that really defines a lot of gap year participants. Like, things happen, they don't necessarily go as planned. And a gap year is really a great way to kind of build your skills on how to respond to those kinds of situations, and find new pathways and make the best of challenging circumstances. So I'm going to ask anyone who would like to answer that question to just jump in and share.
I can start.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think in the beginning one challenge kind of is the intimidating aspect of like, oh my gosh, I have a whole year right now. How do I even plan what I want to do? Like what does my year even look like? And for me, I took that challenge in kind of like segments. I said, okay, I want to do a few things. I want to find some sort of internship. I want to volunteer somewhere, and I want to travel the world. And then after I had those couple of buckets, I was like, all right, where do I go with this? And then I did research. I talked to people that took gap years, and I kind of paved the way into some sort of plan. And then I think the second part that kind of comes with taking a gap year, kind of what Cami was hinting at, is the being okay with change and kind of embracing the chaos sometimes. And inevitably, on your gap year when you have so much flexibility, but also in life in general, a lot of things happen that kind of force you to pivot or to make new plans or to figure out how to fix a problem. And I think the gap year was a great example of that, of like, I had an emergency landing somewhere, so like figuring out how to adapt to that situation, or like, a program that I was supposed to go on was canceled for a bit. So kind of figuring out, oh my gosh, what should I do now? Let me go travel Europe for a bit and do this solo traveling kind of last minute thing. So being able to kind of embrace the chaos, being okay with change, and learning how to actually make the most out of your experiences, I think is something that the gap year really helped me with.
Anyone else want to add? That's a great answer.
Yeah, I can add. Yeah, going off of that, I think with plans changing, um, it's just learning for me to deal with like making decisions, even if they end up not being the best decisions. I think with most people, like things got canceled. For me, it was the same situation. Like things got canceled, plans ended up changing. Um, I was supposed to work a job start of January, um, at in Austria at like a ski resort, and the job ended up not being great. I got really sick for 2 weeks, and then right, you kind of have to make a decision. Okay, where am I going to go? Right, you have to kind of take the money and say, okay, where am I going to put the money in now? And sometimes that ends up not being the best decision. But I think wherever you're at, learning to, okay, there's a situation I'm in that I don't like it so much now, but how can I make the most out of it, right? Or learn something new, or make it an experience that I end up enjoying, or an experience that at least, I learned something from, or that, makes me grow in some way. So I think learning to make decisions, sticking to those decisions, even if they're not the best ones, or maybe you have some regret. I think that in a lot of way it takes you out of the environment you've been in, like growing up with middle, high school, just being in the same environment, like studying hard, doing your extracurriculars, and it's something that really just opens your mind. Yeah.
Great. So sort of the opposite of that question, I wondered if people would like to share kind of a favorite moment from their gap year that stands out in their memory. So who'd like to start there? I'll take any volunteers.
I can start. My
Great, go
favorite
for it.
moment had to do with my travel down to Tasmania. It's really funny, but I live, 40 minutes from the Canadian border. But my first trip out of the country was to Australia, which is like about the farthest country possibly you can get to from where I live. But there were so many amazing moments from that trip. Obviously, the wildlife in Australia is very, very amazing, especially Tasmania. They have the Tasmanian Devils, which is pretty nice considering our mascot. And then also just, meeting astronomers from all around the world. I had been to astronomy conferences before, but they were always in the US. And seeing kind of everyone's the same. Everyone's ideas, about astronomy are very similar. Everyone's, view of the night sky, feeling towards the night sky is the same. And the opportunities that I was able to gain from that conference were amazing. I got to connect with a bunch of really cool people and start some research projects. And it was really, really awesome because I was able to meet some people who actually had a relationship to Duke who were living in Australia, which was really interesting. The biggest like market, I guess it's like a street festival kind of, but it's a market in Hobart, which is the capital of Tasmania. I actually met somebody whose brother had attended Duke Medical School, and he saw the T-shirt, and it was super fun interaction. And so being in Tasmania was wonderful, meeting tons of very cool people, and seeing a very unique part of the world.
Yeah, and Jed has a good blog post on that. So if you want to read our blogs at dukegapyear.duke.edu, you can hear more about that trip and lots of other people's activities as well. All right, anybody else favorite moment from their gap year? Kai,
I can go
looks
next.
like you unmute. Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
So I already hinted at it, but I spent 6 weeks in a Buddhist monastery in South Korea, and that was probably some of the craziest moments of my life. I never in a million years expected it. I've always, as a kid, always thought, oh, it'd be so cool to be a monk and live in the mountains and learn kung fu. And I feel like pretty much everybody has that dream, that dream and that thought, because it's just such a crazy and wild dream. So when I realized I had the opportunity to go see Korea, since I'm a quarter Korean, I thought, okay, I might as well make it worthwhile, do something amazing. And I saw the opportunity come across my table. I chose it. I had to live with monks who barely spoke any English, and I barely spoke any Korean. So it was an amazing experience. And I can't imagine doing anything other than that in that time.
And you're taking Korean at Duke right now, isn't that right?
I am currently, yes. I'm in 102, so
Yeah.
still my Korean isn't great, but it definitely put me in good stead for the Korean 101. So I highly recommend taking advantage of that. If you do go somewhere abroad, capitalize on it and take an easy language 101 class.
Yeah, cool. Well, I don't endorse easy, but you're well prepared for the course, so it seemed easy to you. Yes. Awesome. So now kind of switching to positive moments to just lessons that you've learned. So I think one misconception about gap years that's sort of out there in the world is that people are just sort of wandering around with no real plan. But in fact, in interacting with all these wonderful people, I have learned so much from them. And actually, they always have great words of wisdom and experiences that really help them be prepared for college and be prepared to succeed at a place like Duke. So I wondered if one of our panelists would talk a little bit about, things that you learned, whether it's about yourself or a skill that has really, helped you in life beyond your gap year or during your gap year if you're still on it.
I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think kind of saying yes to some opportunities and to kind of what to different opportunities and kind of learning how to find the different niche interests that you might have is something that I learned. I kind of on my gap year, similar to Kai, I was just like, let's do it. Like every time that there was some opportunity or something that sounded cool, I said yes. And I think that is something that I've noticed a lot of gappers have in common, kind of that willingness and that go-getter mentality. And I think taking a gap year, it both advanced myself. I was able to advance myself both personally and personal growth, independence, things like that, but also kind of in a Duke sense and getting into Duke and like there are some clubs that you might have to apply for or different opportunities that you want within Duke, it really kind of gives you a leg up. Being able to talk about the different experiences, the different research that you might be doing, or the internships, or kind of taking a whole year of your life that you've had all of these awesome experiences that most people haven't, and being able to kind of pull them out of your back pocket is super helpful. And I've seen that in a ton of different gappers throughout the years, and kind of how much they've excelled at Duke. And yeah, I think that that's a big one. And then another one is kind of in that saying yes mentality, both with classes as well. So I actually started off in Trinity, was very undecided in what I wanted to study. Knew I was kind of interested in business in general, but not entirely sure how I wanted to kind of go about that. Um, and so I think having that, like, the gap year and that saying yes mentality, and that, let's do it, let's try this out, embrace the chaos mentality. I tried out a ton of different classes, and then tried out a few engineering classes, ended up really liking it, and switched into Pratt. And so I think that, the gap year and the, like, oh my gosh, let me try something new, maybe I'll like it type of mentality really helped me in, figuring out what I actually wanted to major in and what I want to do.
Great. Anyone else like to share on that question?
I can go again.
Kai, yeah, go for it.
I mean, I guess it's following on from the whole embrace the chaos aspect, but college can be stressful, life can be stressful. I mean, even like high school and life before is equally as stressful, if not more sometimes, especially with college decision coming out and applying for all different schools and all that. Obviously, that's past most of you, but it still can be stressful. But I feel like having nothing go to plan for a week straight, a month straight, can be horrifying when you're in the moment. But then looking back on it now, knowing that you were able to weather that storm and being able to draw on that experience in the future, and just building up your bank of lived experiences to help you combat different stressful situations in your life, can be an amazing thing.
Great. So I'm going to turn to the Q&A for a second, because Jeffrey has a really good question there. This one's for me. So can you clarify exactly what the Duke Gap Year program consists of? Is it primarily a cohort that stays in touch via Zoom? Is there more to the programming beyond the financial support? So everyone on the Duke Gap Year program makes their own gap year plans, but the Duke Gap Year program allows them to connect during their gap year and after. So there are monthly Zooms. There's one required at the beginning, but we also have Zooms that are optional. And that's a great opportunity to get to know other people who are going to be part of your class year at Duke. You arrive on campus, you may know or kind of know of 20, 25 people who have also had really interesting experiences. So that's the start of a great community. I also facilitate a group chat, and so that's always active. And sometimes I hear questions from the group chat, and I can sort of help people out with Duke questions while they're on their gap year. We have a newsletter. Later on in the year, we match current gap year participants with current students who did gap year, and sort of mentor relationships. So lots of different ways to sort of remain connected with Duke, even while you're off on your gap year. Once you arrive on campus, the community continues. We have a welcome event the night before move-in. Starting this year, we've had a retreat at the Marine Lab where people kind of discuss their experiences, reflect on what they've learned in their gap year. And Student Initiative was really instrumental in getting that going. And then sort of just occasional events and ways to connect with the community. So it's a really unique program that, yes, the financial support is super important, but also just a way to get to know other people who have had a wide variety of really cool experiences, and to sort of keep being excited and having sort of a connection to your future university while you're all over the world doing interesting things. So that's kind of the short answer to what it is. It's both funding and community. But feel free, if you have questions, to add them to the chat for me or for any of our panelists. So I guess I will ask a question to our panelists now.
Cami, is it
So
okay if I add something really quick?
yeah, add, go. Do it.
Yeah, I also just wanted to stress again how amazing the gap year community is. And I think especially kind of, first of all, having that Duke community when you're on the gap year is really cool, because you're able to kind of meet up with a lot of different Duke gappers throughout your gap year. So I met my current roommate in Paris. I met one of my friends that I just traveled to Guatemala with in London on my gap year. I met my boyfriend in Israel. So kind of like being able to meet a ton of people throughout your year helps kind of really ease the transition into Duke. And the second thing I'll say is that gap year kids are really awesome, and kind of everyone has their own very, very niche interests, and kind of again this really awesome mentality. So being a part of that community is just really, really cool, and really, and it's kind of a community that you're already into from the moment you get into Duke, and you kind of already have a place in. And so that's also something that I think can be overlooked, but is really just an amazing, amazing part of the gap year program.
Yeah, and I would add too that it's something that's really growing, kind of not, and I don't just mean like in numbers, but also just in the community in general. And so the interns have been really instrumental in sort of thinking through what kind of programming would be interesting. So the retreat was new this year. The podcast sort of started maybe in February. So it's also an opportunity to kind of help shape a community at Duke, which is really cool. The program's been around since 2019, but it was interrupted in the COVID years. So it's sort of in the very early stages of its sort of new era. So it's just a really cool group of people. And as an administrator here, I mean, it's rare that you can bring together, a group 10, 15, 20, however many people we have with such a wide variety of interests and experiences and like really cool insights, and who are very entrepreneurial about things, are able to come up with great ideas and then like see those ideas to fruition. So cool group of people. I totally agree with that. All right, so let's think about the audience out there, people that are either, committed to Duke, yay for you, or considering your college options, but also thinking about whether a gap year would be a good fit for you. What advice do you all have for people out there who are sort of on the fence? What would you tell them? What advice would you give about making the gap year decision? Or, if you've made the gap year decision, just about benefiting from a gap year. So all of you all, are done with your year or mostly done, have done all sorts of interesting things. What advice do you have to share?
I can kick it off, I guess. As I said, like in my introduction, I initially was never going to take a gap year. I felt like I would just be left behind by my friends, and that's definitely a feeling that I feel like all my friends who didn't take gap years, that was the reason, that was the main reason they didn't take it, because they thought, okay, I want to go straight onto school. I want to start my next step of education, and I feel like that can be a fine mindset, sure. But at the same time, if you give yourself a day, a week to just fully buy in and think, okay, if I'm 100% excited for a gap year, what would I do? If I have this amount of money and I can plan and do anything I want in the world, what would I do? And then just forcing yourself to look at it from that perspective and think, okay, I can do this. Like there's so many things that you can do, and you discover so many things that you would never even thought could be possible just through a bit of research. And then that snowballs into you being so excited to take a gap year that's the reason why I took one.
Great. Others?
I can go next. My response to this question is kind of to cover off a fear that I had when I was deciding to take a gap year, which is, STEM currency, right? When you're going into a STEM field, having a good grasp of the material is very important, right? And if you took, the previous class, a year ago, integrating into the next class is going to be a little bit trickier, right? Because you've forgotten some things. And so I was a little bit worried about that when I decided to take a gap year. But what I want to say is that it's pretty easy to set yourself up for success in terms of staying current. Everything in your gap year is, kind of free form, right? You can do whatever you want, and you don't have a very strict structure. I mean, you can give yourself a strict structure if you want, but everything can be, as mobile as you want. And so finding, just an hour a day, or a few hours a week to just do a few problems in your field, read a little bit of the textbook or something like that will keep you current. I feel more prepared for those STEM classes than I did when I came out of high school, because I've been able to review some stuff. And then also just doing passion projects with your field, right? If you're a computer science major, build a project you want to do, right? For me, it's, astrophysics. I've been working on some astrophysics research. And so by doing some of those passion projects and by, just taking a little bit of time out of your day to focus on what's coming up in your academic life, you can make sure you stay current in your STEM discipline. So that's my response there.
Yeah, I think that's really practical. That's a question that often comes up with people thinking about gap years, like, what's going to happen to my calculus after a year of traveling? And so I think, Jet, that's really practical advice, really good. Anybody else want to share kind of some advice for the people out there?
Yeah, I can add some
Lucas.
things.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, for me it was like I think the idea of like which decision, if it went wrong, would I regret the least? And I've run into like just doing the gap year. I have met like just strangers. Like I remember I was taking a train from Romania to Bulgaria and met a random guy on a train. He was like, "Yeah, I wish I would have taken a gap year." And met another person in the hostel was like, "Man, I should have taken a gap year." And it made me think like, you know, so many people have like would be so grateful to have the opportunity to get funding for taking a gap year. So many people, like when I tell them about this opportunity, they're like, "What? That makes no sense," right? And I think that in itself is a reason to just go for it, right? Even if you're uncomfortable, right? If you think, oh, you're not sure what you want to do. For me, like I had really no plans going in, right? At the last moment, I kind of decided what I wanted to do. And now looking back, I'm like, imagine if I hadn't made this, like, taken this one step, made this small decision. All these experiences, amazing people I met, places I visited, all of that would be pretty much like would not have been able to experience that or would have an experience maybe different if I would have taken a gap year in the future. But again, I think now is the most logical time to take a gap year. Um, in terms of like the funding and just having this break, this big transition from high school to college.
So I want to say two things. All of these wonderful people have said, one can do anything, and I just feel as a staff member that I have to say you can't do anything in the whole world. You need to do an eligible gap year activity if you're in the Duke Gap Year program. There are some parameters, like we don't provide funding for startups. There are some travel restrictions which can change. But this information is on the Duke Gap Year program application, so I'd encourage you to check that out. And if you have any questions about your plans or how they may fit into the parameters, I'm totally happy to answer you. Duke Gap Year at duke.edu. And then second, I just wanted to address a quick question in the Q&A about the professional gap year consultant. So no, I know the answer is that the people in the chat, as far as or on this panel, as far as I know, didn't do that. That's actually a really new opportunity that we launched last February. So if you are out there and I'm really curious about this, but I'm not really sure how to go about planning, there's definitely some advice on our website. There's some sample itineraries. I'm happy to connect you with a current gap year participant. But like I said earlier, we do provide some funding for everyone to connect with an accredited Gap Year Association, Gap Year Association accredited consultant who's really a professional gap year planner to help you out. And that information is on your portal, and you'll also receive more information on that via email. Okay, so I see another question, and I think this is a great question
Kenny.
to end on, and this is for our current students. And this is about, Kai, did I?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add on something to Lucas's point quickly.
Yes.
So, along with what Luke was saying about how many people were saying, "Oh, I wish I took a gap year," I'm sure Noah can attest to this as well, and I'm sure Jen and Lucas can as soon as they join Duke. But the amount of times I've told somebody about just like a fraction of what I've done like gap year, and the first thing they say to me is, "Oh my God, I wish I took a gap year. Like I made such a mistake coming straight to Duke. Like I've lost count how many times." I think there's probably more people who've said that to me than more people than the amount of people who haven't said it. it's such an amazing experience that so many people like are afraid to take to capitalize on and lose the opportunity. So just if you do have the opportunity and you think it's right for you, throw yourself into it.
Yeah, and I think I kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but I think the misconceptions are number one, that it's like you're getting derailed, and in fact, it's an opportunity for you to sort of focus your interests. And then I think the other misconception is that it can be not accessible or not affordable because, like, travel is expensive. But that's one reason why we're really um, happy to be able to offer the possibility of funding, and for you to apply for funding, because we really think this is at Duke an experience that can be valuable for so many people. And I often get like, "You're the person that sends all the gap year emails," and it's like, "Yes, I am. You already knew me." All right, so a really good question I'm seeing in our webinar chat. And this is for our first year, well, our current Duke students, I guess I'd say. And the question is, can you talk about what it's like to integrate into the first year class when you've had such amazing experiences and the vast majority of students are coming directly from high school? So can you talk a little bit more about, what it was like to sort of enter college in a sort of different way than many people, and how you integrated into the community in general?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think, in general, when you're coming into college, there's a transition period, whether it's, from a gap year, or from high school, or from, if you went to the army, some people come. So obviously there's going to be some sort of transition period, and of like maybe even a shock of like, oh my gosh, I'm at a new place. I'm here for the next 4 years. Like, how do I do this? I don't think that's unique to you taking a gap year. I think that's just what happens when you come to Duke, or to any school really. But I think kind of what the gap year gives you is taking that oh my gosh shock and turning it into, okay, I'm here. Let me make the most out of this experience. Um, does it inhibit you from making friends? Absolutely not. I think on the contrary, it kind of expands your opportunity to meet new people, because first of all, you're still a freshman. You're going through all the freshman experiences of living on East Campus and going to your first basketball game, and applying for clubs and doing this and that. And so you have that kind of um, that those experiences to share with freshmen, but you're the age of sophomores, so you're able to kind of be on the same level, or like maybe not be as intimidated of like someone who's been here for a whole year, but rather kind of become really close with them. So for me, I can attest to that, of like a lot of my friends are in both grades. And then I think the third thing is that, like I said, you kind of embrace, you're inevitably, I think, after taking a gap year and in general, you kind of look for stuff to be involved in, whether it's research, whether it's clubs or whatever. You'll kind of find the communities that you want to be a part of. So I actually, and then on the other side of academics, to me, I think that like I was able, you're able to integrate yourself into the academics pretty seamlessly. I think it's kind of just like taking a long summer vacation. There isn't really a difference in like you're gonna forget whatever calculus you learned in that summer. It's pretty much the same as like a year, and you kind of are able to jump back into it and learn how to study again, and it's a pretty quick transition because you kind of have to. But I think that that's the same as like taking a long summer break, which you get when you're transitioning from high school to Duke. So I think you're definitely able to jump into the academics really, really well. You kind of have that go-getter mentality of, I want to join these clubs, I want to find my community, and you have double the amount of people that you might feel that you can connect with. So I think it's kind of an all-in-all win situation.
Hi, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Noah like hit the nail on the head. Honestly, I can add a few more like anecdotal experiences. Um, I I didn't expect to have much of a transition period and like a culture shock coming from the UK. But I feel like so I was fully prepared. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a lot more of a shock just being like having taken a gap year. But actually, in reality, it was the other way around. Like just telling somebody that I took a gap year, they said, "Oh wow, you're old," and then it was, "Tell me more." That was pretty much like and people here don't really care if you're a year older. There's people, as Noah said, who've done military, who are 21 freshman year. So you're nowhere near the oldest person in the year. So and even me coming from international place, there is another gap year student of the freshman cohort called Sanjay, who is Singaporean, did his military service and took a gap year. So he hit all three of the like the outliers that people will think, oh, I'm going to be an outcast because of these three things. And he is having an amazing time. He is still one of my closest friends, and he's absolutely enjoying it. He's absolutely loving his time at Duke. He's enjoying every second of it. So if he can do it, I'm sure that everybody else in the world can. And everybody's just excited to hear about your experiences. That's all.
And I think also
Yeah,
coming
Sanjay is
into-
super cool. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Noah.
I think also just coming into Duke, having taken a gap year, you already have the gap year community that you can kind of meet a ton of cool people that are in your grade and also in many other grades, beyond kind of going through the orientation programs or O week and things like that. So it's just another community that you can be a part of.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, a very, very small number of people are going to enter Duke really knowing who 25 people are. You know, I guess there's like a few areas where there's a particularly large number of Duke people, but most people may know no one or may know one person a little bit. But, you know, there's a really high likelihood that you'll live in a residence hall with another person who did a gap year. So that's why it's great to sort of be connected in with that community. And I would add totally like people, number one, come to Duke with all sorts of experiences. So gap year experiences are really important to the community. That's one reason why we support gap years. But you know, people are coming from all over the world, all different kinds of schools. I also had a person in my residence hall who was in the military and was 21, and he was in the military in Singapore as well. And that was really cool. You know, I was like 18 and came straight from high school. In different, you know, states have different rules about, you know, how old people are in different grades. So I would just encourage you not to get like too focused on exactly what age people are, because you're going to meet people in a relatively wide age range, you know, 4 or 5 year range. Not necessarily in your first year, but who are current Duke students at the same time that you are. And then I'd also just wanted to share, maybe in closing, something that someone said on another one of these webinars. I think it might have been Emma, who you may meet if you come see us, which is that everybody is new to Duke, right? So yes, you're coming from a gap year and other people are coming from high school, but you're still discovering a lot of things about Duke, about the college experience together. So even though, you know, you kind of are a little bit of a different, you know, starting point, you have a lot in common, and a lot of things to connect about. So I wouldn't worry too much. Just from my experience interacting with gap year people, you know, they're definitely able to get involved in clubs, make friends, you know, gap year friends and non-gap year friends, and just really contribute and do a great job at Duke in general. So I'm going to close with that because I see our hour is about to end. Just a few reminders. We're going to be at Blue Devil Days all 3 days, 12:30, Broadhead 068. That's next to Panera on the lower level of West Union /Woo/Broadhead, all the same place. We'd love to see you for lunch. We'll have a variety of gap year people there to talk to you about their experiences. It's very informal. You can sign up, but you can also drop in. So don't hesitate to come meet us there. We'll also be at the academic fair from 4 to 5:30 in Wilson Gym. So find our table. There'll be current Duke students who did gap years. I think Noah, you might join one day. But there'll be different people every day who oh, Kai, you too? Okay, yes. So meet these people in real life, and also others. We'd love to talk to you, and you can also feel free to send us an email at dukegapier@duke.edu. So 8 o'clock. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to our panelists for taking time out of their day to share their experiences and hopefully convince you to come to Duke and to do a gap year both. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, morning, depending on wherever you are in the world. Bye.